及天下杂志共同打造的 AI 大师论坛。Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the AI Master Forum hosted by the Yongling Foundation and the Commonwealth Magazine. 今天邀请到国际级的 AI 大师，跟我们一同探讨人工智慧将会如何形塑人类的未来。我们今天将要站在巨人的肩膀上，一同感受 AI 跨领域的颠覆力量。让我们一起并探讨人工智慧将会如何形塑人类的未来。我们今天将要站在巨人的肩膀上，一同感受 AI 跨领域的颠覆力量。让我们一起并肩往未来前行。Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to stand on the shoulders of giants today. Together, we're going to explore the revolutionary power of AI and how the AI revolution is going to redefine our tomorrow. 接下来，让我们邀请今天论坛的贵宾以及重磅级的讲师出场。Next, I'm going to bring to the stage our distinguished guests and speakers. 首先，让我们欢迎主办单位永龄基金会郭晓玲执行长以及炉边对谈主持人国立阳明交通大学林奇宏校长。Let's welcome Shirley Gold, CEO of the Yongling Foundation, and our moderator today, Chi Hong Lim, President of National Yangming 交通 University. 接下来为各位欢迎今天的两位主讲人吴恩达博士以及李杰博士。Let's welcome our two keynote speakers today, Dr. Andrew Ng and Dr. Jay Lee. 那今天呢，也非常荣幸，永龄基金会创办人、本次论坛的召集人郭台铭先生，以及 ChatGPT 之父 OpenAI 创办人 Sam Altman 也一起出席。Please welcome Terry Guo, founder of the Yongling Foundation and the father of ChatGPT, co-founder of OpenAI, Sam Altman. 我们请台上的贵宾先看向中间的镜头。Let's firstly look at the cameras in front of you. Let's have a photo together. 先看向中间的镜头。接下来呢，请看向后方 and in the back 后方的镜头。And then to your right， 接下来看向右边，您的右手边，我们右手边前面也有媒体记者朋友们。And to your right， 接下来请看向左手边 ，and then to your left， 看向左手边。接着呢，我们想请郭台铭先生带领台上的贵宾一起比个赞，好吗？再次看向我们中间的镜头 ，Thumbs up everybody for the second group photo。好，先看向前面大会摄影师的镜头，我们后面后方 ，and in the back， and then to your right， 看向右边 ，and then to your left， 看向左边 ，and back to the middle for the last one， 再看向中间最后一张。各位贵宾，我们再次掌声欢迎我们今天论坛的贵宾以及我们重磅级的讲师。Give it up once again for our speakers on the stage. You may return to your seats. Thank you so much. 我们请台上的贵宾可以先行回座，谢谢。You may return to your seats. Thank you so much. 有请。接下来论坛一开始，让我们有请主办单位永龄基金会郭晓玲执行长为我们开场。Now for the opening remark. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Shirley Gold, CEO of the Yongling Foundation. 掌声欢迎。
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Shirley Gold, the CEO of Yongling Foundation. I'd like to invite all of you to today. We have our speakers, invited guests, and everyone here today in person as well as online. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. Yongling Foundation was founded in the year 2000, and since then, we have always kept our eye on the future. We have worked tirelessly to push for fundamental change on long-term impact in places of need here in Taiwan and around the world. In education, we launched Yongling School of Hope with the goal of equalizing basic education for underprivileged kids. We have teachers, social workers, and created our own teaching materials and teaching training courses to support each and every one of our students. As of today, we have helped over 160,000 students, many of whom have gone on to bigger and better jobs in society. In philanthropy, we have stood in front of the front lines of disaster. In 1999, the biggest earthquake in recent Taiwan history, where over 50,000 houses collapsed, we were there to help rebuild. In 2009, one of the most disastrous typhoons wiped out entire towns, misplacing hundreds of families. We were there to meet their needs. In 2021, at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, Yongling Foundation Yongling Foundation and Foxconn Group donated 5 million doses of the life-saving vaccine to help protect the people of Taiwan. In health, we have built a cancer hospital, the National Taiwan University Cancer Center. It is a state-of-the-art facility providing most advanced treatment practices available internationally. The Cancer Center aims to offer precise treatment and personalized regimen to all cancer patients. Fast track to today. At the verge of the next technological revolution for mankind, we are here. We had the Industrial Revolution in the 1800s, the computer revolution in the 1900s and early 2000s, and now we are facing the artificial intelligence revolution. We understand the importance of AI to the future of the world, but most importantly, to the future of Taiwan. For this very reason, we are hosting this forum today that is absolutely free to everyone and anyone who wants this knowledge. We have over 1,000 people here in this very room, and the entirety of this forum will be available via Yongling's YouTube channel and Facebook channel for those who are not able to join us here live today. I was told that this event has reached full capacity in just a matter of a few days, so thank you for that. But obviously, this is because of our esteemed speakers that are here today. I know that every one of our speakers here today are already leaders in their respective worlds and are famous in their own right, so it is my great honor to give each and every one of them a proper introduction. So our first speaker today is Dr. Andrew Ng. Dr. Ng is Managing General Partner at AI Fund, CEO of Landing AI, founder of Deep Learning AI, chairman and co-founder of Coursera, and an adjunct professor at Stanford University. He is also authoring and co-authoring over 200 research papers in machine learning, robotics, and related fields. He was also the founding lead of the Google Brain team and chief scientist at Baidu. Dr. Ng now focuses time primarily on his entrepreneurial ventures, looking for the best ways to accelerate responsible AI practices in the larger global economy. He holds degrees from Carnegie Mellon University, MIT, and the University of California at Berkeley. In 2023, he was named one of Times Magazine's 100 most influential people in AI around the world. So let's give him a warm welcome to Dr. Andrew Ng.
Thank you so much to Shirley Gold, CEO of the Yongling Foundation. And ladies and gentlemen, the first keynote speaker today is Dr. Andrew Ng. 接下来呢，是我们今天的第一位主讲人，吴恩达博士。
Thank you, Shirley. It's good to see everyone here. What I want to do is share with you today what I see as some exciting opportunities in AI. So I've been saying for a few years that AI is the new electricity. And that's because one of the difficult things to understand about AI is a general purpose technology. meaning it's not useful just for one or two things, it's useful for a lot of different applications. Like electricity. If I ask you what is electricity good for, it's almost hard to answer that question because electricity is useful for so many different things. And like electricity about 100 years ago, I think AI is now going to revolutionize every sector of the economy. What I want to do is start off with a brief description of the technology landscape, and this will then lead into a discussion of what we can all do with AI. So, there's a lot of hype and excitement about AI, and I think a good way to think about AI is as a collection of tools. The two most important tools in AI are supervised learning, which is very good at labeling things, and the new entrant, generative AI. If you study AI, you may have heard of some other tools as well, but today I want to focus on just the two most important, which are supervised learning, good at labeling things, and generative AI. So supervised learning is a technology that started to work really well about 10, 15 years ago, where we could take inputs and label them with an output. Given an input A, we could compute an output B. For example, given an email, we can label it with whether or not it is spam. The most lucrative application of this I've ever worked on is probably online advertising, where all the large ad platforms can input an ad and some information about a user and label if you're about to click, you're likely to click on the ad. And for a single company like Google, this drives more than $100 billion a year. I see we have also Appia here, a very successful MarTech Taiwanese company also making good use of this technology. In self-driving, sorry about that. All right. In self-driving cars, we have AI that can input a picture of what's in front of your car and label it with position of the other cars with driver assistance or self-driving. One of the projects one of my teams worked on is given a ship route, we can label it with how much fuel it's going to consume, use that for logistics. My teams do a lot of work in manufacturing where we can take a picture of a smartphone that's just manufactured and tell us if there's a defect for inspection. Or given a restaurant, if you want to monitor the reputation, you can look at the restaurant review and label that as a positive or negative sentiment for reputation tracking. So one thing about AI, even supervised learning, is notice how many different applications it is useful for. And when it started to work well 10, 15 years ago, it was a lot of work for many of us to go and find and build to these applications of supervised learning. So just to walk through one concrete example, this is what building a supervised learning labeling project looks like. If you want to build a restaurant reputation monitoring system, you start by getting data, so pieces of text like, the oyster omelet. This is what is amazing. You say there's positive sentiment, server was slow, there's a negative. My favorite dan bing, that's positive. And so given thousands of data points like this, you then have your labeled data. Then you can train your AI model and then find a cloud service to run it. And after that, you can input your best dinner nights I've ever had, and it'll say there's a positive sentiment. So this is a typical workflow of an AI supervised learning project. Now, I know there's a lot of excitement about generative AI. And I think that generative AI was set up for success with some of the early progress in supervised learning. In fact, I think the last decade was a decade of large-scale supervised learning, where starting about 15 years ago, 10, 15 years ago, we found that if we built a very small AI model, a very small neural network, even as we fed it more and more data, it would not get much better. But when I started the Google Brain team, the primary mission I set for the team is I said, let's just build really, really large neural networks with Google's compute infrastructure. And we found that as we scaled to very, very large neural networks, we could feed it more and more data, and we just keep on getting better. I know Jensen Huang and Lisa Su were in town just recently, and I feel like GPU hardware has powered a lot of this rise of AI in the last decade. How about, if that was the last decade, I think this decade is turning out to be the decade of generative AI, which doesn't replace, but adds to the tools we have in supervised learning, where we now have tools that can input a piece of text called a prompt, and if you run it once, it may say mango shaved ice, mother's braised pork rice, or tofu. And I think that I think that when Sam and his team released ChatGPT November, less than a year ago, it was almost a magical moment. But I want to take just a minute to demystify how the heart of large language models works. Since it seems so magical, how does it actually work? It turns out that the heart of generative AI, of these large language models, is they're built by repeatedly predicting what is the next word using supervised learning. So for example, if an AI has read on the internet a lot of text, like a sentence like, my favorite food is tomato scrambled eggs, right? 番茄炒蛋. I actually really like that. Then it can use this as data and ask, if you see my favorite food is, predict what's the next word. In this case, it is tomato, or if it sees my favorite food is tomato, what's the next word? Scrambled, and so on. If it sees my favorite tomato scrambled, what's the next word? Is eggs. And it turns out that if you train a very large AI system on a very large number of words, hundreds of billions of words, or sometimes more than 1 trillion words, then you get a large language model like ChatGPT or Bard, or Google Bard, or Bing Chat, or others. And I think that while many of you are familiar with tools like ChatGPT as a consumer tool, and I think it's a fantastic consumer tool, there's one other revolution, which is how generative AI is changing AI application development. And I think I'm as excited, even more excited about generative AI as a developer tool, as a consumer tool. But let me show you what I mean. So if I wanted to build a restaurant sentiment review system with supervised learning, this is what I would do. I would get label data, maybe it takes a month, train an AI model, maybe it takes 3 months, deploy in the cloud, maybe that takes me 3 months. So typical realistic timeline for building a production commercial AI system is maybe 6 to 12 months. And many very good teams I worked with took about that long to build a system. But in contrast with prompting, this is what the workflow looks like. You can specify a prompt. This takes minutes, maybe hours. And then you can deploy the model in maybe hours or days. What this means is that there are a lot of AI applications that used to take me 6 months to build, that today there are hundreds of people, hundreds of thousands of people, maybe millions of people that can do in 1 week what used to take me 6 months to do. And this is leading to a flourishing of AI applications. Now, I know you were not expecting me to write code in this presentation, but that's what I'm going to do. So Sam's here. I'm going to use OpenAI tools. But this is all the code it takes to write a sentiment classifier. I'm going to import some tools from OpenAI, load my API key. Then, I don't know, I really enjoyed the Yonglin Foundation meeting. What came away feeling, I don't know. I've never run this before, so I really hope it works. All right, so that's the prompt. So it says, classify the text below the limit of 3 dashes as having either positive or negative sentiment. So, and then I'm actually going to run it. Right, and so, oh, thank goodness that worked. But this is all the code it takes in order to build a sentiment classifier. And this is revolutionary, that so many people can now, with just a few lines of code, build and deploy a pretty good AI system. One of the things I've been working on over the last many months is work with many different industry partners to teach generative AI as a developer tool. And I've been privileged to work with many of the industry experts. So OpenAI, AWS, LangChain, Lambda, Hugging Face, Google, Microsoft, Waze, and Bias, Cohere, almost all the leading generative AI companies. I think we're probably working with all of them at this point, including many that have not yet been announced. And I also want to mention that key to our developer education efforts is our Taiwan engineering team. So deeplearning.ai, my team has been working on this generative AI application. Our engineering team is actually here in Taiwan, and we couldn't have done it without them. And I hope this will be our little contribution to the Taiwan engineering ecosystem as well, and dissemination of knowledge. Now, given this technology landscape, let me share a little bit about where I think are some significant AI opportunities. The size of these circles shows what I think is the value of different AI technologies today in terms of value generated from applications compared to what the value would grow to 3 years from now. Supervised learning, really massive. For a single company like Google, worth more than $100 billion a year, and with millions of developers working on it, I think over the next 3 years, which is a very short time horizon, may double, go from massive to maybe even more massive. Generative AI, very exciting, but it's small right now, but I think it will much more than double over the next 3 years. Sometimes people see this slide and they think I'm not excited about generative AI. No, I'm very excited about generative AI. I think it just will take time to figure out and build the applications. And 3 years is a very short time. If it continues to grow at this rate, then in 6 years, maybe it'll be even vastly bigger. But the light shaded region is where I think there are a lot of opportunities for developers, big companies, startups, everyone, to identify and build exciting opportunities. And one thing I hope you take away from this part of the presentation is AI technologies are general purpose technologies. Supervised learning and generative AI, they're both general purpose technologies. And this means they're useful for many different tasks, and many applications remain to be identified and built. But sometimes you get asked about this. But there's one caveat, which is that there will be fads along the way. I'm not sure how many of you remember the app Lensa. This was the app that you can upload 10, 15 pictures of yourself, and it'll draw a cool picture of you as a scientist or an astronaut. And so it was a really good product. Its revenues took off like that through last December, and then it did that. And I think this is because Lensa was the first of, unfortunately, what may be multiple fads. That was a good idea, but wasn't a long-term sustainable business. When I think about Lensa, I'm reminded of when Steve Jobs, as well as Terry, gave us this. And then there were fads too. Developers built an app for $199 US to do this, to turn on the flashlight. And it was a good idea, but this too was a fad that wasn't a long-term sustainable business. But on the flip side, the iPhone also allowed other smart entrepreneurs to build long-term sustainable businesses like Uber and Airbnb and Tinder. And I think on top of generative AI platforms, viewed as a developer tool, we have opportunities to do that too, and that's what I'm excited about. So the first trend is generative AI as AI as a general purpose technology. There's just one more trend I want to share with you, and I want to share this because I think this will impact many industries that Taiwan is strong in, which is, and this addresses why AI isn't more widespread yet, right? So a bunch of us, we've been talking about AI for 10, 15 years now, but its value is still very concentrated in consumer internet. So why is that? If you were to take all current and potential projects, current and potential AI projects, and sort them in decreasing order of value, you get a curve that looks like this, where to the left are the most valuable projects like online advertising and web search, where you can write one AI piece of software, if you're Google, say, and apply that to 1 billion users and generate massive economic value. So about 10, 15 years ago, my friends and I figured out a recipe for how to build projects like that. We hire 100 engineers, have them all work on one project, apply it to 100 million or 1 billion users, and this turns out to be very valuable. But once you go outside the internet sector, almost no one has 100 million users that you can apply one AI system to. Instead, these are the types of projects I've been working on. We're working with a factory that makes pizzas, and we're taking pictures of the pizza, and the factory needed to take pictures of the pizza to make sure that the cheese is evenly spread. This turns out to be about a $5 million project for the factory, but you can't hire 100 engineers to work on a $5 million project. Or agriculture. I know there's a lot of agriculture in Taiwan, obviously, but we're working with a company that makes agriculture machinery, and we figured out that if we can find out how tall the wheat is with cameras, with computer vision, and chop off the wheat at the right height, then we get more food for the farmer to sell, and it's better for the environment. But this is another $5 billion project that the old recipe is not economical for. Or inspection, material grading, a lot of these $5 billion projects. So whereas to the left of this curve is a small number of billion-dollar projects, or $100 million projects, we know how to do that. In other sectors, we see tens of thousands of these $5 million projects, and the struggle has been, how do we get all of these tens of thousands of projects economically built? Fortunately, the trend in AI has been toward better tools, specifically low-code, sometimes no-code tools that enable the user to do the customization. So what this means is, instead of me having to do work, to figure out what to do with pictures of pizza, now the IT department of the pizza factory can build an AI system using their own images and realize that $5 million worth of value. And by the way, these pictures of pizza, they don't exist on the internet. They're proprietary to the factory, and so Google and Bing do not have access to these pictures either. And the key technology to do this is prompting, as well as a technology called data-centric AI, in which you can let the, say, IT department of the factory write prompts to provide data, and this lowers the barrier. And I'm sharing this because I think this is an important part of the recipe to take a lot of the value of AI, which has so far been concentrated in consumer software internet, and push it to the rest of the economy, which is even bigger than the tech industry. So where are the opportunities? I felt 5 years ago that many valuable opportunities are now possible in AI because of supervised learning, but I feel even more strongly about it because of generative AI. And the puzzle I wanted to solve 5 years ago was, how do I get many of these projects built? And even though I had led AI teams in big companies like Google and Baidu, I couldn't imagine how I could operate a team inside a big tech company to go after the very diverse set of opportunities that AI now makes possible. I think starting new companies is an efficient way to do this, which is why I started AI Fund, which is a venture studio. But of course, to incumbent companies, there are also many opportunities to integrate AI into existing workflows. And often incumbent companies have a huge distribution advantage. But concretely, where are the opportunities? This is what I think of as the AI stack. At the lowest level is the hardware layer. And I know Jensen Huang and Lisa Su were just in town. I think semiconductor industry is very capital intensive, very concentrated. Clearly TSMC, UMC are doing very well. I personally don't play there because of how capital intensive and how concentrated it is. But clearly in Taiwan also, building servers is a great business. On top of that are the cloud infrastructure, also very capital intensive, very concentrated, so I tend not to play there myself. And then there are the developer tools, including OpenAI, right? The API part of OpenAI. I see the developer tool market as potentially with some huge winners, but also hyper-competitive. In fact, look at all the startups chasing OpenAI. So I personally tend to play here only when I have a significant technology advantage, because I think that gives you the right to have a shot at building a sustainable platform, to be one of the huge winners. And even though a lot of the media attention is on the infrastructure and tooling layer, we saw this with every wave of technology. When SaaS came up, all the attention was in the technology layer. It turns out that for the infrastructure and tooling layer to be successful, there's one other layer that needs to be even more successful, and that's the application layer. Because for the tools and infrastructure to be successful, the applications have to generate even more revenue to pay them, to make this whole, to make all the economics work. So maybe one example, I was talking the other day on the upper right with the CEO of Amorai, which is a company that applies AI to romantic relationship coaching. And what do I feel like I'm an AI guy, I know nothing about romance, right? And if you don't believe me, you can ask my wife, and she will confirm that I know nothing about romance. But when my team AI Fund decided we wanted to do something applying AI to romance, we wound up partnering with the former CEO of Tinder, Renata Naibo, and who knows much more in a systematic way about relationships than anyone else I know. And with my team supplying the AI expertise and her supplying the relationship expertise, we're able to build something very unique. And at the application layer, I seem to keep on finding more and more opportunities where it looks like there's a huge market need, but the intensity of the competition is just quite low. So over the last few years, AI Fund has actually refined our process of building startups. I'm going to share with you what this process is, because I think there'll be many great startups to be built, hopefully here in Taiwan as well. But we always start off with the idea. Often we partners suggest ideas to us. And I want to share one case study, which is one of our investors, Mitsui, operates a line of ships. And so they came and suggested to me, they said, hey, Andrew, you should use AI to make shipping more fuel efficient. And this is one of those ideas that I would never have come up with myself, because I've been on a boat, but what do I know about global maritime shipping? But so they suggest the idea to us, and in a typical process, we spend up to a month validating the idea for market need and technical feasibility. And if it passes that, we then recruit a CEO. We recruited Dylan Cowles, fantastic CEO with one exit before, to work with us to build the company. We then spend 3 months to do deep customer validation, build a technical prototype, and if the company survives this stage, it survives this stage 2/3 of the time. We then fund it. That gives it capital to build an executive team, get real customers, and is then in the position to go and raise additional capital and be well on its way. So today, Bering is steering hundreds of ships, many hundreds of ships on the high seas, like Google Maps for ships, where the software, AI software, tells a ship where to go to get to the destination on time and with about 10% less fuel, thus saving about $500,000 per ship, and also reducing carbon emissions. And this startup would not have existed if Mitsui, that knows this idea, hadn't suggested this to us. And I find that I've learned that my swim lane is AI. I don't try to be expert in relationships and shipping and everything else. I try to be an expert in AI and instead work with partners on all of these different application sectors to find exciting opportunities to go after. And certainly when I'm in Taiwan, I'll be here for a few days. Hopefully there'll be opportunities to explore locally meaningful ideas to Taiwan as well. I've just one last slide, then I'll wrap up, which is to touch on risks and social impact. So there are many risks of AI. I think the biggest risks of AI are bias, fairness, and accuracy. But AI technology is rapidly improving and become much safer. And I think AI will disrupt jobs as well, even though we create a lot of value. And I think we have an obligation to take care of the people whose jobs are disrupted. And there is excitement about AGI, artificial general intelligence. The most widely accepted definition of AGI is AI that can do any intellectual task that any human can. And I think AGI is still many decades away. There are different opinions on that. But if you want AI to do any intellectual task a human can, I think that's still quite far away. But I hope we will get there. And then lastly, I know even last couple of days, yesterday, even today in Taiwan, some people are asking me about extinction risk. And I think AI leading to human extinction risk is very overhyped. I hope that maybe in our lifetimes, there'll be AI smarter than any of us. It's already smarter than any of us in some ways. But humanity has lots of experience controlling things far more powerful than ourselves, like corporations and nation states. And we've managed to make it okay. So I don't really doubt our ability to control AI. And lastly, when it comes to the real existential risk to humanity, things like the next pandemic, fingers crossed, hopefully not, or climate change leading to massive depopulation of parts of the planet, or another asteroid, lower chance, doing to us what it did to the dinosaurs, wipe out the dinosaurs. I think that if we look at the real existential risk to humanity, AI will be a key part of the solution. So rather than trying to make AI go slower, if we want humanity to survive and thrive for the next 1,000 years, I would rather make AI go as fast as possible. So with that, let me say thank you all very much.
Thank you so much to Dr. Andrew and for your very, very informative and comprehensive talk. Thank you so much. 非常谢谢吴文达博士带来非常精彩的分享。Andrew, thank you so much for taking us on a deep dive into the opportunities in AI. 那接下来呢，在我们炉边对谈之前，想要请摄影师先到舞台上，帮今天参加我们 AI 大师论坛的所有贵宾拍一张大合照。And before we move on to the fireside chat, we're going to have our photographers take a photo of all of you who joined us for the AI Master Forum today. Okay, everybody, please look at our photographer on the stage. 请大家看向我们舞台上方摄影师的镜头。Okay, everybody, a big smile. 3, 2, 1. All right, let's do one more. Okay, 3, 2, 1. You want a thumbs up or whatever poses that you like, okay? 3, 2, 1. 好，请各位贵宾给自己一个掌声。Please give yourselves a big round of applause. And we thank you so much for your participation today. Thank you. All right, next is the fireside chat we all been waiting for. To introduce our moderator and speakers, please welcome Shirley Gold, CEO of the Yongling Foundation. Again, 接下来我们再次有请永龄基金会的郭晓玲执行长为我们介绍炉边对谈的主持人以及讲师 Shirley.
For the much anticipated fireside chat, we're honored to have Dr. Chi-Hong Lin as our moderator. Dr. Lin currently serves as the president of National Yangming Chiaodong University. He has a PhD in cell biology from Yale University, and his research interests focus on cancer biology and is an expert on cell tissue microscopy. In 2010, he was appointed the Health Commissioner of Taipei City Government and subsequently also new Taipei City Government, earning him 8 years of experience in public health policies and their implementations. Please put your hands together and welcome Dr. Chi-Hong Lin to the stage. Also joining the fireside chat is Mr. Mark Chen. Mr. Chen is the head of Frontiers Research at OpenAI, and where he focuses on multimodal and reasoning research. He led the team that created DALL-E 2 and the team that incorporated visual perception into GPT-4. Prior to joining OpenAI, Mark worked as a quantitative trader at several proprietary trading firms, including Jane Street Capital, where he built machine learning algorithms for equities and futures trading. His parents are Taiwanese and have spent his high school years in Taiwan, actually, and later graduated from MIT with a bachelor's degree in mathematics and computer science. So give a round of applause to one of our very own favorite son of Taiwan, Mr. Mark Chen. And our main speaker for the fireside chat, I'm sure, is no stranger to anyone here. Mr. Sam Altman is the CEO of OpenAI and chairman of Helion Energy. He has become known as the man behind the AI revolution and a legend in Silicon Valley despite his young 38 years of age. His vision to make the most cost of energy and intelligence fall to near zero as a way to create abundance and accessible for all. He is also the chairman of WorldCoin, a global UBI experiment, and Retro, a partial reprogramming longevity company. He was formerly the president of Y Combinator, where he expanded the scope of the program and mentored thousands of founders of many of the most successful startups of the last decade. As you can see, his influence on the world is no joke. So let's give us a round of applause to the favorite son of the world, Mr. Sam Altman.
Thank you, Shirley. And now over to our moderator, Professor Lin. 接下来把时间交给主持人林奇宏校长。
Okay, Mark and Sam, welcome to Taiwan.
Thank you.
I know that you swing by Taiwan and you're going to stay for less than a day. So thank you very much.
Very happy to be here.
So did the previous talk feels like back to the classroom again?
Yeah, Andrew was my professor when I was an undergrad, so it does bring it back.
Okay, great. So in the next 25 minutes, I think I will go through the topics that the audience, both in this room and online, will be very interested in, which is what's your keys to succeed and your areas to implement and to apply, and ways to sustain and things to worry about. So maybe we should follow that order. Well, before I begin, you want to say a few words to the audience? Just say hello and how many times have you been in Taiwan?
Sure. Hello. This is my third time to Taiwan, and I wish I had a longer one. This is a very short visit, but it's been a great day so far. I think the AI revolution is going to be a massively transformative and positively transformative thing. Humans through every technological revolution have always worried about what the jobs are going to be like and what we're all going to have to do. And it turns out that human desire for new things and creativity is pretty limitless. And so we're going to find wonderful things to do. And what we're seeing with ChatGPT is people just use these AI tools to do more and do better, and they can take their ideas and bring them to life even faster. And it very much is an amplifier of human ingenuity and will. And I think it's, although always a little scary when the ground shakes, where we're headed is just probably much better than any of us can imagine. We will all have tons to do, and we'll look back at this time as a sort of very barbaric age, and we won't believe how much better it's gotten. I think the rate of change will be fast. I don't think AGI is decades away, although it mostly depends on how fast Mark's team makes progress. But I think it'll be pretty quick. And each year, more amazing things will be possible that weren't possible the year before. And that's also true even if we look backwards. Most of the world, I think, didn't predict ChatGPT a year or 3 years ago. And I think that will remain true. But I think we're on to something pretty deep and fundamental, and it'll be great.
Yeah. Sure. Hey, everyone. I'm Mark. It's nice to be back in Taiwan. I haven't been here in 4 or 5 years, but it still feels like home. So glad to be back. Like Sam said, AI is bringing about a lot of change, but maybe one unifying characteristic of people who work at OpenAI is they're more optimistic than pessimistic about the future of AI. And while we care about safety a lot, we really think it'll bring about a better future.
Okay, thank you. So first, keys to succeed, I'll let you just say whatever you want to say. But I realize that you just or in the process of a world trip. So what's your main takeaway from this trip, and what you expected? Is there any critical feedback that you want to share with us?
Yeah, so Mark and I traveled together earlier this year in this crazy trip around the world, which was incredibly gratifying, tiring, but really amazing to see how throughout many countries, 6 continents, many, many cities, the enthusiasm about AI, the belief that the future is going to be much better, and more than that, what people were already doing today. GPT-4 and ChatGPT as it is today, when we look back at it, we're already embarrassed by it. Everybody's going to be embarrassed. When you got that first iPhone, you thought it was really cool, but now if you look back at it, those pixels are each this big and just didn't hold up that well. But it still pointed to something amazing, and now we have these supercomputers in our pockets. Even in that iPhone 1 era that we're in now, seeing the creativity of people around the world, the enthusiasm for where it's going to go, the businesses people are building, the way they're transforming their workflows, that was all amazing. It was interesting to see how different things are in different cultures in different ways, but the enthusiasm was pretty remarkable.
Yeah, not too much to add to that. It's just we went from place to place, and developers were coming to us with a wide diversity of apps, and I think they're really far ahead of the curve from what we had expected.
Yeah, that's good to know. So it seems that opportunities are everywhere, right? So based on whatever infrastructure and platform you have built, yeah. So that moves to my next question, which is the areas to apply, and also I think very importantly, if it is a platform like the electricity that Professor Ng mentioned about, specifically in what area that you think will be nourished in the next decades. And I know that OpenAI, you started with a NPO, but now you are a profit-making company, just a regular company. So what you point yourself, on these 2 roles, please?
You want to do new areas, and I'll do companies?
Sure, yeah. Which direction that we want to take OpenAI?
Or kind of what areas are we most excited about for people to build on?
Yeah. So, I have to plug the areas that I personally research. So I focus on multimodal and reasoning research. And I really think that these are the 2 most promising directions going forward. First, with multimodal, right? We want our models to access what we see, what we hear, and to be able to generate novel content, that we couldn't generate ourselves. And I think this will really unlock a bunch of new interfaces for the model. And on reasoning, today the model still makes silly mistakes here and there, right? And we really want to get to the point where, in order for the model to be truly assistive and robust, that it doesn't make these mistakes anymore and can really be kind of a sparring partner for ideas.
Yeah, I just want to underscore how big of a deal it is if we get reasoning to work. GPT-4 can reason the tiniest bit some of the time, but it clearly is not doing what we do, even like what a child can do. And GPT-4, although it can do a very good job mimicking what humans have done, doesn't feel like it's going to go like invent new science. And if we can teach these models to reason, then I think we can contribute to the sum total of human knowledge, and that's when the world will really transform. If we can make more scientific progress in 1 year with these tools than we could in 100 without them, the quality of life will go up for all of us so much. Some areas that I'm particularly excited about are education, healthcare, personal productivity tools like what we see people do using these coding tools. That's been amazing. I think those will all be great. And then on the company structure side, so we started as a nonprofit. We knew that training these systems were going to be expensive, but we had no idea how expensive. And when it became clear to us that we were eventually going to have to spend hundreds of billions of dollars on building out infrastructure if we wanted to get to our goal, we knew that the nonprofit structure we started with wasn't quite going to work, but the reasons that we started with the nonprofit structure were still super important. We wanted to get the incentives right. We wanted a way to sort of return the benefits and the governance of this technology to society as a whole. Wouldn't make sense for like one company to own electricity. If we were successful enough to invent AGI, wouldn't make sense for one company, I think, to control that either. And so we came up with this idea of a capped profit. We have a nonprofit that governs us. We have a capped profit to still let capitalism do its magic for our investors and our team. But then beyond that, the nonprofit gets the excess.
Yeah, okay. That move to my third question is what's the way to sustain? I know that the computation costs a lot, and so people have been worrying about the energy consumption. And I also read upon one of your wish list in what you want to do next is to reduce the cost of energy and intelligence to near zero. So, what's the way to, make such kind of AI and their future development sustainable, both from the energy perspective and from the population of people's perception view? Yeah.
Fusion. And if that doesn't work, then solar. The energy needs as we look out are enormous. I think the cost of intelligence over time should trend towards the cost of energy. And there's going to be huge demand for intelligence, and thus huge demand for energy. And if we can create abundant, cheap, clean, safe energy, and again, I think we're going to have this very soon with fusion at massive scale, like the scale that you need for everybody on Earth to get to enjoy the fruits of AGI. That's our plan.
Okay. Mark, you want to add something?
He's the energy guy. I can't I can't add
Okay,
anything
all
to
right.
that.
Good. And then, of course, the risk, things to worry. Okay, so is there any real things that we should be worried about, or there's just none?
All right, I'll go first. You can add. Look, things are going to go wrong. Things go wrong with every new technology. One thing that we think is important is to make our mistakes, not just OpenAI, but society's collective mistakes, while the stakes are low. So we believe in deploying the technology iteratively. We put these tools out in the world. We see how people use them and abuse them in ways we didn't think about. And every time we put out a new system, we want it to get better and better. So GPT-3 had many flaws. GPT-4 has less flaws. GPT-N will have even less. And the way that systems get safer and the way that we collectively as society get to steer them is this iterative process of using them in the real world, seeing what breaks, fixing that, using them a little more, making them a little better, a little more powerful, and that'll keep going. So I agree with what Andrew said. I think we have, as a society, successfully confronted very risky technologies and very powerful systems, institutions before, and we'll do that again. But it doesn't mean that things won't go wrong along the way. It doesn't mean there will be no disruption. Things will go wrong. There will be disruption. And that's part of why we think it's so important to give people in our institutions time to gradually adapt. And what some people in the field advocate for of like basically build AGI in secret and then push the button one day, we think would be quite bad.
Yeah, like the last 5 years of safety research has taught us anything, it's that you really can't do safety research in a vacuum, right? The things that people were predicting that may be unsafe, some of those didn't turn out, right? And you really need this deployment process to have your AI be grounded in the world and then see how people use it. And I think this also underscores why international cooperation is important here. We're here because we want to understand the norms, what's safe for one geography may not be safe for another. And we think, this is not just a US kind of problem to solve.
Yeah, that's really important. We have come together as a globe several times before. The IAEA for atomic energy is an example that we point to. There's several others. I think this is going to require another one of those because this is a technology that does have such global impact. And figuring out how we get the collective preferences of the world and make these decisions together, that's going to be super important.
Yeah. Do you worry about biased database or misinformation? Some of them are actually, could be really contaminated on purpose. So, do you have any thought about those?
You want to go first?
Sure, yeah. Of course, yeah, we worry a lot about bias. And I think this goes back to the point of, figuring out what the different geographies define as bias, because it really varies from place to place. And, misinformation, people will put incorrect content out there. Our model is trained to predict content on the internet. So there are mitigations we have to do after training to make sure that we reduce as much as possible the scope of misinformation regurgitation.
No two people on Earth will probably ever agree that one system is unbiased. And so one of the things that we think is really important is that we can make systems perform reliably, that society as a whole agrees on what the wide bounds are, and then in different contexts, different cultures, different subgroups, different individuals, there's a lot of ability to get the system to behave in a particular way. And that ability has worked far better than people have thought. So it's certainly true that if you just train a model on the raw internet, you're going to get something that most reasonable people would call biased in different ways. But with techniques that we and others have developed, like reinforcement learning from human feedback and a whole bunch of other things, you can surprisingly steer these models. And so you can kind of configure it how you want. OpenAI makes some decisions, but you can change it a lot. And this idea of empowering individuals, but setting the edges and also the sort of standard behavior well, I think is really important. And again, this has surprised even the experts in bias. They've said this just works way better than they thought. GPT-4 out of the box is like less biased than a human expert in these topics. And the configurability per user is pretty doable. Now, on the question of misinformation, that's a really hard one. It's hard to define that. It's hard to agree on it. I again come to this thing of the metric should be reliability. Like if you ask the model to follow a certain set of like ground truth facts, can it do that well? And I think a lot of Mark's team's work will turn out to be very important for that.
Yeah, people also worry about technology, especially high tech, will cause inequality or inequity for the society. So do you think the generative AI will worsen or maybe?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
I think in general, technology is a force for equalizing. And if the common example everybody uses is a very poor person and the richest person in the world get the same iPhone. Mm-hmm. And that's not been, things like that have not been true throughout history. But if you think about a tool like AI, if everybody on Earth can get access to the best tutoring system ever, the best medical care ever, that helps everybody. But that relatively helps poorer people more than richer people who can already pay a lot for intelligence. Same thing with energy. This is like really true throughout history. If you study the decrease in the price of energy over time, that has always helped the poorest half of the world more than the richest half. So I think technology does this in general. AI will be a super strong force for it.
Okay. Now, do you...
There was a but.
Please.
The but is that all is only true if society makes the right decisions. You could certainly imagine a world where all of the compute power in the world belongs to one company or one small set of people. And in that case, it won't be such an equalizing force. But I don't think society is going to let that happen.
Okay. So, do you worry about over-regulation by the authority or governments?
Not that much. I mean, it certainly could happen. I also worry about under-regulation. I think this is... People in our industry bash regulation a lot. You know, it's like hard... We've been calling for sort of regulation, but only of the most powerful systems. We say, you know, let the small models go, let open source go. Models that are like 10,000 times the power of GPT-4, you know, models that are like as smart as human civilization, whatever, like those probably deserve some regulation. It seemed to me like the least controversial thing I was going to say this year, and I got completely, still am, getting bashed for it by the tech industry. And there's this reflexive anti-regulation thing, but regulation has been not a pure good, but it's been good in a lot of ways. You know, I don't want to have to like make an opinion about every time I step on an airplane how safe it's going to be. But I trust that they're pretty safe, and I think regulation has been like a positive good there. Same thing for medicines or whatever. So it's possible to get regulation wrong, but I don't think we sit around and fear it. In fact, we think some version of it's important.
Okay. You don't worry about it, Mark?
Well, on regulation, I think Sam said a lot, but just kind of going back to inequity, whether AI causes more inequity, I think there's two examples that come to mind. First, code generation. You know, code generation helps people who are, you know, learning to code or just kind of beginning at coding much more than it helps an expert who kind of already knows the language. And another thing, like diagnosis, right? Like we've already seen examples of people who don't have access to medical care kind of type their symptoms into ChatGPT and sometimes come up with diagnoses that explain, you know, their symptoms. And that's not something that maybe someone with the access to the best doctors will need to worry about.
Okay. Usually, I don't ask the following question to the people like your ages, but I'm very interested in asking, do you have any words to our next generation?
Well, yeah, I think you know, it's important to work really hard and have conviction, right? I think these are two of the qualities that have really made OpenAI succeed. And conviction is really important. Like, you're not going to build AGI if you don't believe that it's possible. And I think from the very beginning, we've believed that it was possible. And I think that was one of the biggest strengths. You know, everyone else in the industry was saying, you know, hey, scaling is not the right route here. You can't do it. And we just kind of had that conviction and that optimism. And of course, you do have to work hard. Yeah.
I think there has not been a luckier generation than the generation coming of age right now, like probably in all of human history. The tools, the sort of like wide open field of possibilities, the chance to sort of do anything that in a way that was just not possible before. There's this fundamental new force in the world, and this is the like coming decade where the key elements the key directions will be set. And kind of along with what Mark was saying, the lesson that I wish I had learned earlier in my life, but I now deeply believe, is you can just do stuff. Like, you can just start a company trying to build AGI. A lot of people will tell you that's like a really dumb thing to do. They'll say it in even meaner ways than that, but you can still just do it. And this is like a very powerful thing to like deeply internalize.
Okay, well, Mark, I think you want to elaborate a little bit more on that because you have experienced Taiwan's education system, 新竹实验高中 graduate. So, you know, think back. So, what's a comparison between the education, elementary education you have received in Taiwan versus what you have received in the States?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I guess, I mean, I feel like I also had it very lucky because, you know, the American education system, it's a little bit more relaxed, right? It gives you kind of the room to explore your interests. But I was a pretty undisciplined kid coming into Taiwan. I think Taiwan really did teach me, like, hey, you really have to focus, you have to be disciplined. So I think I really got the best of both worlds here.
Yeah, you are traditionally defined 坏学生, best students, right?
Oh, sorry?
Kind of thing. You are one of the 坏学生, best students. Yeah, by
so.
that regards.
I have a story about Mark. Mark is one of like the most loved managers at OpenAI, which is a very rare. I mean, not all managers at OpenAI are loved. Mark also hadn't like done much research-based stuff before OpenAI. And when Mark took on managing the team, which also is probably the team of people that are the most difficult to manage in all of OpenAI, he was like, I'm going to learn to be a manager, and just started reading books and started talking to people. And it was just like, and like threw himself into this, like, I'm going to go learn a totally new thing and get really good at it, which almost no one does in their career beyond a certain point. Most people are just like, yeah, I'll figure it out as I go. Like, it can't be that hard, whatever. But the spirit of, like the discipline to really study something hard when it's a new thing in any phase in your life, even if it's a category very different than stuff you've done before, I think pays off hugely.
Okay, we've got about 90 seconds left. Any words you want to, share with the audience?
On any topic?
Any topic.
Does someone want to yell one out and we'll respond? That's not going to work. Okay. Yes. How do you create a product or service to be localized without restricting its potential? The proper guardrails? Oh, so one of the things that I think, that's a great question, thank you. One of the things that I think is so surprising about this kind of technology relative to what people thought, and Andrew mentioned this earlier, is if you just prompt the models, if you just tell it how you want it to behave, it can do a pretty good job. And that ability, I think, is going to get better fast. So as we look to future versions of GPTs, the ability to control the models and get reliable behavior, to localize it, to have it follow what you want, you'll really just say in natural language, here's what I want you to do, and it'll do it. And speaking of equalizing forces, the fact that you get to just like tell the computer what you want in natural language, which everyone knows how to do, and it will do it, is this amazing new thing. So it works a little bit with GPT-4. It'll work much better with future models. But we're heading to this world where it's like the Star Trek computer. And you just say, this is what I want, and the thing happens. And for all questions like that, how do I get it to do this? How do I get it to do that? The answer is you just tell it, and it'll do it. And I think that's going to be a very, to all of us, that's going to feel like a very new thing. Kids that are growing up now will expect it, but that'll be how we deal with computers.
Yeah, I want to borrow your words to finish this sector, which is to potentiate the benefit and to mitigate the risk. Thank you both very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much to Professor Lin, to Sam, to Mark, for giving us this very thought-provoking discussion that was very inspiring. Thank you. 再次谢谢校长以及 Sam 以及 Mark 带来非常精彩的分享。And we do have a QA at the very end, okay? And before we do that, to introduce our second keynote speaker, please join me in welcoming Shirley back to the stage again. 接下来呢，我们再次有请侯晓玲执行长为我们介绍今天的第二位主讲人 Shirley.
Last but definitely not the least is our next speaker, Dr. Jay Lee. Dr. Lee is a Clark Distinguished Professor and Director of the Industrial AI Center in the Mechanical Engineering Department of the University of Maryland, College Park. He's leading AI Data Foundry for advanced data-centric AI research for diversified industrial systems. Previously, he served as the Ohio Eminent Scholar, L.W. Scott Alter Chair, and University Distinguished Professor at the University of Cincinnati. He also served as Vice Chairman and Board Member of Foxconn Technology Group. In addition to receiving countless awards, he also published Industrial AI Book in 2020. Smart Manufacturing magazine named him a top visionary in 2016 and one of the most influential professors in 2020. I cannot possibly name all of his accomplishments in the time that's here. So without further ado, please welcome Dr. Jay Lee.
让我们欢迎工业大数据专家、马里兰大学讲座教授及工业人工智慧中心主任李杰博士。Next, we're going to have Dr. Jay Lee, Clark Distinguished Chair Professor and Director of Industrial AI Center, University of Maryland. And he is also quintessentially world's leading expert in industrial big data. 那这个李博士讲完之后呢，就是我们最后的 Q&A 时间哦。到时候都欢迎各位贵宾可以提问，我们也会再次的邀请今天的所有的讲者回到舞台上。And now over to Dr. Jay Lee. Please give him another big round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, thanks, Terry and the Yongling Foundation for inviting me to share with you some real examples that we have to do for industry, right? AI is always interesting, but you also need actual implementation, right? So today I will share with you what are our experiences and what are the gaps that we need to move forward, right? But especially look at the future trends of a data-centric economy when systems are connected, the modern world. We have lots of data more than you and I needed. But how much data is useful and how much data is usable? Not all the data is usable, right? And second of all, do we have to use a $1 million investment for AI to solve $1 million problem? Or can I use $1,000 AI spending to save $1 million industry saving? We call this a non-traditional asymmetric machine learning. We learn from the war, right? Asymmetric warfare. $3,000 drone can damage hundreds of $1 million ship. Why not AI? So let's look at the trend, right? AI started in 1955 during the natural language processing, so human voice data, image data. Then machine, robots, machine tools, chillers, elevators, jet engines, wind turbines, EVs. So eventually you have a 3D, right? This is a large language model, more and more now coming. But next is a large knowledge model. Knowledge is broken. Your knowledge is different from mine. But if we work for same companies, we gotta have overlap, right? So how do we cherry pick the best one to assemble them to the right one? Of course, when you combine all the source of data from history, from sensors, then eventually the data becomes so rich. Then the question is, do you want to use all the data to do always deep learning, or you want to have a simplified learning? Eventually, of course, from many companies like NVIDIA, for example, say, oh, I'm going to sell AI as a platform. Maybe one day data center going to have a GPU, so everybody can do AI in the cloud space. But that's what the foundation platform is, right? If that's the case, the question will be, how about this? I got hundreds of thousands of jet engines flying in the air every day. I flew in 777-300, probably either GE 90 engine or Pratt & Whitney 4000 engine, right? So eventually our GE last week said, oh, we're going to have a 90,000 engine flying and 50,000 wind turbines. Wow. So you got a bulldozer everywhere and EV like Tesla everywhere and modern foundry. You got all the modernized 7 nano, 5 nano, 3 nano, all the very expensive conveyors and the Daifuku, all the conveyor and all the expensive machine UVs. Everything connected, right? So the question will be, how much we know, how much we don't know. So even the question will be domain knowledge. We, human beings, we always know what we know, right? So we drive experience. For example, Kaizen. continuous improvement. It's based on alarm, create problems, then we continuously improve. One day, we have a good model I can avoid. Unfortunately, the baseline different, the experience cannot be used. Or I can learn, but I cannot duplicate. Of course, more and more for large system, for example, like you have a aircraft flying in the air, if weather continue changing, but how can I save fuel based on large data sets coming in, right? Wind turbine, the mountain turbine, at night, you have a low temperature, high humidity, you have ice accumulating on the blades, reduce your power generation. You got like ship, right? We worked on a ship before, right? You have weather, wind, and the wave, 3W, continually changing. We can navigate, learn the drag force, and save 6% of fuel per year. 7, 8 years, you can buy a new ship. You got a fish farm, how to measure the bacteria, and how can the pH value of the water eventually have a healthy fish. So all the invisible we don't know, but eventually how to avoid them. So this is what we're talking about, right? How we kill the blue area, which is going to be a large return in centuries to come. Because you and I probably will be gone, but airplane continue coming. So therefore, one way is new better data representation. When we have large data, we have less data. The method is very different. I have less data, I can control design experiments. We have large data. Wow, I can do all kinds of clustering, but I can do topological analysis, right? But the problem is the purpose, not the problem, not the process. So we take, for example, TSMC data sets, this is about 800,000 data sets, right? So this is the wafer yield. After that, so what's the purpose? I don't want to see all the problem. I want to see what can I do to avoid that. Wow. So I can simplify that to a very simplistic view, how to take action, not to understand the problem. Action is more important, right? So eventually, we're talking about the data set now. In industry space, the knowledge is broken, right? So we have a large data. If someday you have useful data, congratulations, you're in a great shape. Unfortunately, most of the time, we have useful data, but not useful, right? You donate the blood, you have HIV, you have hepatitis B, your blood is not usable. Useful, but not useful, same thing. Eventually, sometimes you have useful data, but not useful. I'm sorry, buy the bullets, use it, squeeze it, right? Every juice count, do something. Or, of course, you should not continuously collecting data not useful. Unfortunately, lots of companies today continue doing that every day because they think someday there's a magic AI will be there to solve their problems. Right? So therefore, we know something well, we build a response service approximation called RSA. This is my problem. I can model it, right? So eventually, I have lots of data for the baseline. I build it. But during the actual applications, might be local problems. It's okay. I only select those useful and useful data, small data sets. I can build much better, much useful decision-making process. Right? So eventually, we're talking about what are recent advances. We normally learn from the last 20 years from old machine learning world, right? And now we're saying, well, we have lots of non-traditional problem now. We have to start using asymmetric machine learning. So this is something we call intelligent metrology system. If we can take a data-centric system as a metrology system, today, if somebody asks you about metrology system, you think about it has to be a laboratory, very protected environment, very precise machine, control temperature, everything perfect. No, I'm talking about metrology is a measurement system, powered by the hour. You measure jet engine flying now. You cannot take off the engine, right? Wind turbine running in the field. How do you measure relationship between the wind and the power generation? So you have lots of data coming in, sensor, but we got to create a large model from the broken source. Humans, digital twins, design, big data, simulations, right? Models. Eventually, we give the human final tweak to make decisions, right? So machine learning, AI augmented metrology in the real world, real time. So eventually, one thing we're talking about is transfer learning. When you have a large number of equipment, large number of fleet in the field, you cannot always collect all the data, train all the model. That's not economically viable. Even you can do so, the time will be wasted. Eventually, transfer learning becomes a very common way to do it, right? Of course, some domain, some machine working on welding, some machine working on painting, but how can I see my motor behaviors, right? Same thing for the vehicle. I have a vehicle. If you're a Tesla driver, I am. I also bought a Tesla insurance. Tesla hired three of our PhD before, 2 left, 1 joined Wall Street, another one still there. Hey, this is exactly vehicle to vehicle, human to vehicle. How I drive, my behavior. When you buy insurance from Tesla, they can judge you based on aggressive driver, how you take turn, how you signal lights, right? Eventually, this is exactly what happened. Tesla announced, called the FSD beta version V12, August 26. I think you remember 2 weeks ago, the stock valuation, 10%, $860 billion, right? Because it saved 90% of code. They use good driver's behavior to train a system, not just use the camera itself. That's why sometimes they say, oh, I really don't need a LiDAR, because they have all the data from a driver who bought insurance. Well, I'm one of them, right? This is a natural way of thinking, how to borrow things, accelerate the training, right? So eventually, one day, your phone has about a dozen sensors. EV has about 10 times, right? You have a lot of sensors generated from your driving. When I hit a pothole here, I label the GPS and some vibration sensor. The guy behind me, 2 miles ahead of you, pothole, be careful. It's going to happen. Today, like Waze, you have to input by manually, right? So in the future, you're going to have automatic generated label data based on the moving equipment, moving machine, right? Could be satellite-based. So I'll give you some case study because time. So you have 4 areas, which call factory, facility, fleet, and field. I call the 4F. Typically applied to all industry, like oil field, right? Wind turbine field, right? Factories, foundries, right? Hospital facility, et cetera, et cetera. So let's use one example, high volume manufacturing, right? Semiconductor. We've been working on semiconductor for over 20 years, right? Intel was my first founding member. How we started? They give me a vacuum pump. Wow, lots of vacuum pump in clean room, right? But when vacuum pump fail, that's not good. How can we worked on the Fab 22, Chandler, Arizona, right? That was the first fab, right? We worked on. So after that, you start moving in to SRC, Samsung, CVD, and AMD, Sematech, then the Global Foundry, Applied Material, Etcher, and the Lam, right? And the Hitachi High-Tech. We train a TSMC engineer. And today, we're still working with Winbang, UMC, and of course, Hitachi High-Tech and Applied Material. Over the last 20 years, we learned big lesson. But in a lot of fab industry, right, in the modern fab, 7 nano below, yields big challenges. And we're still using design experiment, DOE. It's a good method, but it's very hard to reproduce it. You do, I do, very different. When one parameter comes, then we have to rechange it. Eventually, we developed a new digital twin method. Faster, better, right? So eliminate try and error. So this is very important. If you can speed up the calibration, you have a better volume production, higher yield. Of course, you make more money. There's no doubt. Can't imagine, right? Second thing is when I was in Vice Chairman Foxconn, Terry was founder, right? He said, hey, let's do something to make our manufacturing become more transparent, more predictable, right? Predictable, that's what he said. So the FRI was formed 2018. So we had the opportunity to work with a business unit and say, hey, let's do something. We connect a machine for the right reason. We can monitor, we can predict. So one of the things we've done is that one of the things called stream of quality. In Terry's old dictionary, there's a 6 flow in manufacturing. He always say there's a material flow, people flow, and process flow, which are real, visible. But there's a money flow, information flow, and technology flow. They are virtual, right? But the 6 flow together, you can really know what's going on. You can pay worker every day. Terry always say that, right? That's exactly X. It's a stream of X. I can, using blockchain, stem exactly each process, right? Human, materials, machine, method. Eventually, I can look forward, predict. I can look backward, trace root cause. When customer they don't have to have a station inspection for your product. Don't worry. You got the product, you can trace back, you can look forward. SMT line, you can save lots of money, right? So one factory we did was a World Economic Forum. We said, well, let's try something. So a lot of people walk around the factory every day. They also worry about Endong alarm. Well, why you worry about it? So we can predict, you can save a lot of redundant labors. That has been famous, right? That's kind of lights out factory. Lights out factory means worry-free factory, not no people factory. There are people there, but no worry, right? That's what it is. Of course, eventually, so far, there are about 132 lighthouses worldwide, but Foxconn has 6 of them. I know internally, probably I stepped down board member last year. I think the internal probably 20 to 30, similar, but certified by experts. But second case, large fleet base, right? So you have a wind turbines. Wind turbine, wind keep changing every second, every minute, right? So rather to monitor so many wind turbines, you're going to have a huge data center. No, you're not going to do that. I'm sorry. We rank wind turbine based on every wind speed changes. I can rank them how good, like a professor ranks student. I give a quiz 1, quiz 2, quiz 3. After 3 quiz, I know top 10%, bottom 10%. Exactly. After different wind speed, I know exactly the left side is a high performance turbine, right side is a low performance turbine. Then I try more wind speed to see lowest performance. Then I do machine learning, only for 1 turbine. Save me lots of time. This is the pattern. Yes. I presented it to GE last week. I said, wow, this is interesting. So eventually, we have different power generation. You have different wind speed, like time machine clocked, right? I generate, so each wind speed, I can look at the difference, eventually identify those low performance ones. I don't have to use the data all the time. Eventually, I can schedule based on the power loss. I can maximize my maintenance efficiency, and I can eventually schedule the crew, the vessel, the time, and the weather, of course, right? If the offshore turbine weather not good, the vessel cannot go out. So again, this is very interesting outcome, and it's been adopted by quite a few companies. So eventually, left side is the data side, right? Right side is decision side. You can integrate into one model, digital twin, right? Okay, time. Hospital, ICU. We lose patient every day. I lost my brother-in-law several months ago. We call brain TBI, traumatic brain injuries, right? So if you have patient push into they drill a small hole, put a sensor in there, then you have all the sensors monitoring you, right? Eventually, alarm happen, then nurse rush. The doctor coming, too late, gone. Most of people. Doesn't matter, you rich man, you poor man. Same equipment, same machine. Maybe a nicer room, but lots of data. There's no intelligence, let's be honest. The plug and pray is what it is, right? Today. So eventually we say, oh, there's a human expert out there, called SME, subject matter expert, but there's a ICP pressure, EEG signals. We can use a different type of a fast way to compare different patients, right? Because you have a 20 patient tonight. I cross training, I can find out the high risk patient. Yeah, the TBI, ICU. So doctor can look at the number, tweak. This is a overweight person. This is a different child, as a kid. This is a different old people. So I can find those features that especially important for those patients, tweak them, right? Eventually, make this become more customized from human side. Then, I took a 43 ICU real patient data. We work with the Cincinnati Children's Hospital, which is number 2 in the country. First one's Boston, second one's Cincinnati, right? So you can look at 43 patients, some recover, most people moderate recover and severe disability. But if you look at those people passed away, some of them had a very strong survivability, but the family didn't know. They pulled the plug. That's what happened. Eventually, took 3 years. Doctors say, don't publish. 3 years later, they said, you know what? This is very useful suggestion, not decision. Decision still doctor and the family. So this is interesting. 2 weeks ago, I went to Japan. Japan F3 launched.
So it boosted ignition and liftoff.
So after they launched, then they destroyed it, right? Because of certain failure. Right? So eventually, the reason I know. So Japan NASA called JAXA finally said, oh, let's get data together. Let's do a competition. They did. So they said, okay, we got a lot of solenoid, lots of valve, a lot of happening. So can you detect something? It's not normal. More and more rocket going to be reused, right? Like SpaceX. So it's very important to understand life cycle system. So based on you need domain knowledge, right? We are mechanical engineer. I don't know about you. The valve, from the moment you trigger, by the time they open, 0.1 seconds is very important. Then eventually you have a control, PDF, PID loop, whatever. So we take a dynamic time warping from the 0.1 second. You can quickly develop a good reference baseline. Then you have a similarity-based approach. So our team, 100% number 1. Of course, team 2 is 9.94. Even 1% is not allowed, right? 0.1% even not allowed. Why? You're talking about aerospace. So my PhD student, he was sent by Komatsu, Japan for 5 years of PhD. 1 year ago, he didn't know anything but diesel engine. Now, he's a good data expert, especially machine learning, using non-traditional, right, the time. So previously, we worked with a Taiwan other company like Haiwan, Eric, right? So they demonstrated Industry 4.0 board school, 2016. And the Coast machine, they had a soul. When they sell the machine to other, people have to start watching the machine, cost money. I say, can you remove the worry out? Finally, we use a self-organized map and eventually can predict. So that the company from 2013 ranked number 10 became number 1. And there's the sleep, from sleeping management, eventually how to analyze what the quality of sleep. All right. So I mean, there's a few examples. So finally, summary, big time. Highly connected system, like what we're talking about industry, lots of data, it's true. But we got to know how to select the usable data, right? Otherwise, you'll be buying all the expensive equipment. Probably you cannot save money. Number 2, non-traditional machine learning, sometimes much useful, sometimes, not all the time, right? Depend on the knowledge domain you have. The similarity-based approach often can improve machine performance, right? But you need a systematic way. You cannot do try and error. So one of the challenges of the future for AI industry is that 20 years later, 10 years later, how does young people going to maintain your software? Big problems. Big problems. I don't even know how you code. I couldn't even debug. Big problems. You need to have some life cycle system in place. Not forget about how true. So it's very important to. So one thing is that AI is the actual implementation with speed and scale and systematic approach, not try and error. So that's exactly what my center is. I train engineers. I'm teaching industrial AI. All my students have to do jet engine, battery, semiconductor, right? Pump. All students. I don't know. What? Do it. You do it, you have confidence. You know. So eventually, you have data, computer science, domain is a purpose, but discipline is a process. How you learn, how you do. It's not by surprise, right? So of course, this is a book, probably 2 years ago, but it's time to revise again. With a lot of new stuff going on, it's true. So previously, I also published a few books in Taiwan. The first one is by Commonwealth, and the industrial big data, and also industrial AI. I think it's some good reference if you're interested. Finally, you can look at our website, get some more information. Okay, thank you for your time. Yeah.
Thank you so much to Dr. J. Lee. Dr. Lee, please remain on the stage. Thank you so much. 非常谢谢李杰博士非常精彩的分享哦，请李博士呢在舞台旁边稍后一下下哦，等一下呢就是我们最后的 Q&A 了。Having heard so much from our speakers today, Andrew, Mark, Sam, and also Jay, and also Professor Lin. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to move on to the last session of the day, Q&A. 最后呢，我们要再次的有请所有的讲师哦，回到舞台上来，那看看我们现场的贵宾有什么样的问题。那先请这个博士可以就坐 ，Please take your seat on the stage, Dr. J. Lee, and also our moderator, 林启宏校长，有请 Professor Lin Qihong. He's also joining us on the stage, and our keynote speaker, Dr. Andrew Ng. 有请文达博士 and Mark Chen from OpenAI, please also join us on the stage. And of course, Sam Altman, please also join us on the stage. 要有请 OpenAI 的创办人 Sam Altman 到台上来。Thank you so much. And we'd like to firstly go to the experts. Yeah, we got some experts joining us today. 那接下来想先请这个前方我们的这个专家区哦，今天有很多专家也来到现场，我们想先请这个专家来提问。Any questions from the experts? I can see 有看到台科大的卢锡鹏教授，是不是？我们请这个教授也来帮我们问个问题哦。We'd like to firstly go to Professor Xipeng Liu of National Taiwan University of Science and Technology. Professor Liu.
Hi, Sam. May I ask you a question?
Sure.
Okay. I'm a professor in National Taiwan University of Science and Technology. And as you know, Taiwan is not big, or Taiwan is not big enough with limited resources. So I believe the AI positioning is equally important to the AI competence. So my question is, how should university focus on the AI instruction and the research to be best positioned in next 10 years, especially for universities in Taiwan?
I can try, but I think Mark or Andrew would be better at that. Do you want to go first?
Go for it.
I think familiarity with the tools goes a long way. And then I also think that although it is still difficult for most universities to compete with the compute resources of the industrial efforts, we're heading into an era again where we've squeezed the easy juice out of scaling, and there's extremely important research to do from how we get to the current models to much more powerful things. So I think we're heading back into a period where research that will happen in universities will be critically important.
Yeah, Andrew?
Sure. Actually, I want to share something about one change that I'd love to see in the education system, not just universities, but also K through 12, which is I think everyone should learn to code. And I did not feel this way 2 years ago. But I think today, one thing that's changed about society is everyone has data. Big companies have data, small companies have data. Even a high school student running a biology experiment has data. And with generative AI and prompting, what Sam said about just tell a computer what you want, and then maybe someday, not yet there today, but someday it'll just happen. But so the value to AI has gone up for individuals because everyone has data, and the barrier to getting it to work is lower than ever. So in my mind, just in the last year, I think it flipped, and I now believe that everyone, all K-12 students, I think it's worth getting everyone to learn to code just a little bit. A lot of programming classes send you down either the game development track or the web development track. You know, the programming systems are like build a game, but almost no one needs to build a video game. I mean, some people should, but not everyone. But I think almost everyone should in the future be empowered to use AI. So that's one change I'd love to see in education.
Yeah, I want to expand on Sam's answer a little bit. So I think there's two lessons from scaling laws. One is the lesson that we took, which is you want to continue to push on scale. But I think the other lesson is that experiments at small scale have big implications for what happens at large scale. And I don't think enough kind of academic institutions have embraced this. Like, there's so much work you can do at small scale because scaling laws tell us how to predict what happens at large scale.
We have another professor.
Yeah. Well,
Jay?
to us, right, there are several levels of, I mean, we're engineering, we're not computer science, right? So we teach AI. Principle, you can take many courses from other departments. Practice-based. So we use real data from industry. Open source, yes. For data challenge, yes. Then some company donate to us, like Seagate, yes. Then we use data to teach students how to do it. Third level, project-based. Some students say, you go to your lab, find your own data sets. A lot of people, they love algorithm. They have no idea how to get data. Hunt your own data, right? Go to company. Wow, and then you say, oh, geez, it's very difficult. Well, that's what the real life is. You cannot wait for data to come to you. The fourth level, professional. Teach other people to do 1, 2, 3. I go 4P, right? Principle-based, practice-based, project-based, and professional-based. 4P. Then you can teach other people to do 1, 2, 3. So in university, you should do 1, 2, at least. Maybe 3. Some intern, yes.
Yeah, well, I have a related question to this. AI is like a huge magnet in the campus. We suck in all the young talents, like this guy here. So I just wonder, from your perspective, because the science and technology have to kind of advance in coordination. So, you know, do you have any comments on this?
I think it should be a huge magnet. I think, you know, the smartest, most ambitious young people are always pulled to the frontier. This is the frontier right now. There have been other frontiers in the past. There'll be other frontiers in the future. But I think it makes total sense that this is the magnet. And I think that's great. Because it's by concentrating all the talent when a new frontier opens that we figure out how to make all the progress.
Yeah, so just follow your intuition.
Don't fight it. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, okay. Mark?
Yeah, not much to add to that. Much better AI magnet than finance or trading.
Yeah. I can also extend that into the population literacy. I come from a healthcare background, so I know health literacy is very important if you really want to, deliver good health or achieve good goals on this. Now, what about AI literacy? Do you think, the population awareness, what's your comment on this?
I mean, there's like 12-year-olds that can use ChatGPT more effectively than most adults. It's amazing. Mm-hmm. Like, this is a technology that I think is so intuitive to use that people who grow up with it will come up to speed extremely quickly, and people who didn't grow up with it but use it for the first time, with just a little bit of effort, can still figure it out quickly. Developing the core models, that still is going to take a lot of expertise and like a lifetime of focus, but using the tools. And I think this is the trend of technology. Computing gets easier and more intuitive over time. If you think back about like when we had to program computers with punch cards, that's pretty bad. Command line, not much better. The first GUI, pretty good. Touch phone, even better. But a model, like a computer you can just talk to, a language interface, even better. And so I think it's just gonna spread super fast.
Yeah. Jay, do you have comments on this?
Well, I think the model itself, right, always continuously improve. But I think we need to also learn how to integrate as a broken domain knowledge to enhance the model.
Okay. Andrew?
Yeah, no, actually, I think I read some stats about what percentage of Americans have tried ChatGPT?
A lot. I don't know the number.
But I was wondering, I felt like it was a lot. I was wondering, how come there's still people that haven't tried it yet? Like, let's get them all to try out the large language models. If any of you haven't done so yet, tried out the large language models, I would just jump in and try it. I think I can promise on behalf of OpenAI probably that you won't break OpenAI software no matter what you type into it. So just try it and get familiar with it. Is that okay if I promise that?
It's probably fine, yeah.
Okay.
And if you do break it, we want to hear about it.
So Mark, in your family members, have you done a survey that what's the proportion of them know about ChatGPT and actually use them?
Oh yeah, they're definitely early adopters. Yeah, we have partner programs within the company where friends and family they try out our models first, and yeah, they're very happy users.
Okay, all right. So maybe we should move to the next one.
Yeah, okay. I think
Your microphone is now.
Yeah. Unmute it? Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry about that. I see our very own Michael Gong, Chief Information Officer of Honghai Group. So maybe Michael, you also have a question? 那接下来我们想要请我们鸿海的资讯长洪培元资讯长也帮我们提一个问题。
Yeah, I think the question is to all the masters. As you all talk about the generative AI and so pervasive into daily business life, what are the most significant ways of hardware and the compute will shape the future of large language models and their capabilities? And also, what do you anticipate the hardware lips will be in the next 5 to 10 years for large language models?
Maybe Mark, I'll save you to the last, okay? Start from the youngest.
Oh, I really think Sam's the right person to answer this.
About hardware?
Yeah.
I think we're going to find out that when there is this amount of upside and this amount of economic potential, humanity and capitalism are going to do some magic, and we're going to go far beyond the level of hardware we think is reasonable. Now, I've noticed there's sort of like two types of people in the world. When you tell people, we can double the amount of compute power and make the model like a little bit smarter. It's like logarithmic scaling, but we're sure we can do it. There's people who say, that's amazing, like that's the best news I've ever heard. And then there's people who say, that's the worst news I've ever heard, like logarithmic scaling is awful. We're in the camp of it's the best news we've ever heard. So it is going to get tremendously expensive to keep doing this, but the value that we think will be created will more than justify it. And it'll be all of the things coming together. Each individual chip will get faster. We'll figure out how to network more of them together. We will be willing to spend more to buy many such clusters. And all of that will just be this relentless progress in terms of the total amount of compute in the world going to AI systems. In fact, I think if you think out decades into the future, there will be far more AI compute than sort of biological compute. And it doesn't face the same constraints, and we'll just keep going.
Yeah, let me comment on, I agree with what Sam said for the long term. Let me comment a little bit on the short term, since I think this directly affects parts of the Taiwanese economy as well. So what I'm seeing is that over the last few years, there's been massive capital investments on GPUs for training large language models. And this is well and good, because I think we're in a research expansionary phase where many teams are coming with better ways to develop these models. So massive investments in the most powerful GPUs, the A100s, H100s, AMD's MI250, MI300, which by the way are actually getting pretty good. So keep an eye on AMD as well. And then I think that for these capital investments to pay off, which I'm confident they will, we have to be doing more work on inference as well. So I see workload changing. Having said that, the amount we keep on pouring into training just keeps on growing, and that's why we spend so much investments on training, because this field just keeps on getting bigger and bigger. So I think that would be an exciting shift. As just now Mark mentioned scaling laws. So my old team at Baidu had done some early work on scaling laws. OpenAI did fantastic research on scaling laws. But there's this phenomenon that's really robust, that if you just the down compute is bigger and throw more data at it, it just gets better and better. And I don't think we've yet exhausted that recipe for making AI systems. And I remember 6-7 years ago, some folks in NVIDIA asked me, hey, Andrew, if we keep making GPUs faster, will people use it? I said, don't worry about it. Just keep making them faster. We'll use all the compute. And I still feel that way today. If anyone has a way to just get us more compute, we will find a way to use them up.
Okay, Jane?
Yeah, I mean, certainly we can see the ChatGPT generative AI is a platform. It will evolve over time. We also see vertical, right? Many verticals, like if you're talking about hospital verticals, field management verticals, even the mobility verticals, you are going to have lots of personal assistant in all kinds, right? Some are image-oriented, some are data-rich environment, some even from sensors. Eventually will be multi-integrated, called the personal system level. I think that's going to happen. It's happening already. Yeah, it will more. Yeah.
Okay, so now we have a question from a small entrepreneur.
Yeah, I think we have one question from Appier. We got Zhi Hanyu, the founder of Appier, here with us today. 佩星的创办人，游志汉创办人。
Thank you all for a very inspiring sharing from all speakers. Similar to Sam, Andrew was also my professor back 20 years ago. So it was very inspiring to hear your talk again. And so my question actually from your talk, so you draw a lot of circle about supervised learning and also generative AI and unsupervised learning, and you give very precise projection about how you will grow for the next 3 years. But as an entrepreneur, we always want more. So we always want to grow more. So what are the critical factors in your mind that we can illustrate that grow beyond your current projections? What are the critical factors in each of the circles? Especially, I think OpenAI plays a very important role, especially in generative AI part. So love to hear all of your opinions about the future growth of AI.
Let me share one thing that's annoyingly slow. I wish this is a bottleneck, and this is why when supervised learning started to work 10 years ago, it took us decades. It took us 1 decade, and we're still not yet done finding all the ways to apply it. Now that generative AI, thanks to Sam and others, are working really well, it would take annoyingly long to figure out all the things to which we could apply it. It's one recipe that AI Fund has found. We like to find subject matter experts that deeply understand the domain to come to us with a concrete idea. So for example, the shipping example, that was when Mitsui came and they said, hey Andrew, you should apply AI to predict shipping fuel to optimize shipping logistics. Now in contrast, we've learned to not engage if someone comes with a vague idea. Someone says, hey Andrew, you should apply AI to financial services. I'm not an expert in financial services, so I don't know what to do with that. So I think part of the process that will take us many years, much longer than I wish, I think it'll be this process of subject matter experts in all sorts of industries, learning a little bit about AI, and then developing those ideas, and then finding an AI build team, like my team or other teams, to work together to build them. There's one silver lining, which is because of the widespread attention on AI, I find that I do run into subject matter experts that know an industry and have thought deeply about it for months or even 1 or 2 years, that sometimes already have a concrete idea, but they just never had a build partner to work with them. And when an AI team and they get together and we hear that idea, sometimes we can make progress very rapidly. But because AI has to go into so many industries and so many applications yet, I think it's going to take us a long time to figure out and build those use cases. So that's why I think of an exciting decade ahead of us.
Yeah, comments on this subject?
Well, Andrew was saying it's important that customer or industry people come to you, right, to provide those opportunities. But we often see those cut across the common issues. And that's why we work industry in 2 different ways. One is common issues, and another one is vertical, specific issues. I think those common issues allow you to develop some areas nobody have done before, right? For example, we'll try to different type of domain adaptation for high-speed application, for example. And But of course, when you specific issue, say, I'm going to work for an aerospace, that's a very specific one. That's different. So I think both sides give us a good rethinking process, right? How to select, even optimize. Sometimes we develop competing algorithms, not only the best one, several good ones. They may work on different conditions. Not only one, several competing, we call, yes. So I mean, it's interactive, interaction with industry is very important, yeah, to improve the AI development. Yeah.
Okay, Sam, you agree upon what your advisors just said?
You know, in the first year on our platform, back in the GPT-3 days, I think there were $2 billion companies that got built like really on top of the platform. In the second year, there were a lot more, and in this third year, we've lost track. So it's really happening fast, like industry after industry, brand new startups, companies that have been around for a while. One of the most fun stories for us is like companies that had been around for a while, weren't working, were able to just plug in the API without a lot of technical expertise of AI. All of a sudden, it all started working, and like, boom, they're like these massive companies. So the thing that I would say is it's not speculative, it's not about the future. About the future, like, no one knows what happens next. I believe that. You know, we could all be wrong here. We could hit some research wall, or it could all go way faster than we think. But if we just talk about what's happening now, people are building incredibly valuable companies with products and services people love. And my very strong belief is that that is just going to accelerate every year.
Mark,
Yeah,
agree upon your boss?
Yeah, I guess I can talk a little bit about a slightly different dimension, like how do we accelerate generative AI from the research side? And I think from OpenAI's perspective, there's no one single bet that we put all of the eggs in the basket. So we really kind of orient the company towards improving generative AI through this principle we call multiplication. And it's really everything coming together. Some teams work on architecture, some work on optimization, some work on data. We think all of these things multiplied together, it's going to be some big coefficient that's going to push generative AI.
Yeah. Can I add to that? GPT-1 was basically a one-person project, pretty much. GPT-4 was our entire company, hundreds of people working together. Like, one thing we do differently from other AI efforts is we just try to say, we're all going to do this thing. You're going to contribute this way. You're going to contribute this way. Your thing might not work. That's fine. But we all kind of like point at the same goal, and we try to get this multiplicative effect. And I think that is still very poorly understood about how progress gets made in the field. The ideas start small, but to really get them to work requires an enormous amount of coordinated effort, and it multiplies.
Okay. Now, the next question move to the healthcare domain.
好，那我们今天呢也有台大癌症医院的陈建宏副院长来到现场，适时也请院长呢帮我们提问。And next, we'd like to go to Dr. Jianhong Chen, Deputy Superintendent of National Taiwan University Cancer Center.
Okay, with recent advance in the medical field, some disease which cannot be treated or cured can be treated now, but we still have two major problems. One is cancer. The second is aging. We always go to aging. So can you elaborate more on how AI can specifically contribute to the healthcare industry, especially on the cancer and the aging? Thank you.
Yeah, tough question. Who want to go first?
You've been doing anti-aging stuff, right?
Yeah. Yeah, not with AI yet. I mean, I do think so I think AI will help with both a lot. I think it's going to take a while until the models really can contribute. But it's possible that even just like, a GPT-style model that reads every paper ever written can come up with some novel insights. But I think we have to develop some new ideas, and certainly like a model that has much more ability to think about physics and chemistry and biology than the models do today, and the ability to run experiments. So maybe you imagine a model in the future that You ask it to cure cancer, it comes up with some ideas, it thinks for a while, it reaches the limit of its knowledge, it tries some stuff in simulation, maybe that's true, maybe it's not. It sends an email to a wet lab researcher saying, can you run these experiments? They run those experiments. You know, it comes back imperfectly, the model thinks harder about that, comes up with new ideas. That will happen. On longevity, I do think partial reprogramming is like the most exciting thing happening in biology right now. And it feels to me like one of these things that could take a lot longer or it could sort of be simpler than we think and crack pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Let me ask one thing. So I think yeah, I've been seeing the U.S. movement toward treating aging as a disease. I think this is a very healthy thing. And again, I have friends taking some compounds off label now, right? Metformin, rapamycin, on the hope that this will extend the health span. So exciting progress. Let me just speak to just the application of AI in healthcare. So I've deployed systems in Stanford Hospital, a bunch of other hospitals, but I found that with AI as a general purpose technology, there's a recipe that my teams and I use to help with lowering the cost of automation in different sectors, including healthcare, but also others, which is, so a lot of people have been saying, hey, will AI replace radiologists' jobs, right? But it turns out that if you want to make a workforce more efficient, this is true in the hospital, it's true for businesses, there's this recipe that my teams and I often use, which is we don't try to automate jobs, we instead think of AI as automating tasks. So if you want to lower the cost of the healthcare system, make it more accessible and so on, the process I would go through is look at what the people are doing in the healthcare system or whatever business you want to try to make more efficient, and don't try to automate jobs. Instead, list out the list of tasks that different people are doing. And if you take radiology as one example, everyone thinks of radiologists as reading x-rays, and yes, they do that. But they also communicate with patients, they also manage the radiology machines, they also have record keeping, they also have administrative work, they train more junior radiologists. And I found that the exercise of going through your workforce, listing out the tasks that they do, and then one at a time, seeing which of these tasks are amenable to automation via AI or augmentation via AI, often that leads to exciting ideas. And often it's not the most obvious idea. So radiologists, they do read x-rays. That turns out to be pretty difficult to fully automate. But we looked at, for example, other things that doctors do. Maybe I shouldn't say what exactly we're doing. But it turns out there are other tasks that doctors do or nurses do that could be easier to automate. I found this type of process useful for going into business, health or otherwise, to identify valuable opportunities for AI.
Yeah, Jay?
Yeah, I cannot answer the aging problem, but the cancer, I think, in the material science, right, old days, from the moment we invent a material, by the time we physically deploy them, 15 years from the past, like composite, additive manufacturing. When I worked at NSF, the 1980s, we found lots of additive manufacturing. But until 2000, start realizing, 20 years actually. Now, in drug, in cancer, there are lots of unknown world you and I don't understand. Even doctors, sometimes they don't understand, of course. So computationally, we need some way to improve, accelerate drug development, even the cancer development. That's very important, right? So NSF support computational material development. Air Force does, and many agency does. FDA, I'm pretty sure NIH, they are pretty keen in doing this kind of stuff. I think certainly it's a good opportunity. Yeah.
Yeah, Mark, can I ask you the flip side of that question, which is now the patient often come to the hospital equipped with AI and ChatGPT, and with that level, the doctor-patient relationship are right now very different from at least what I'm familiar with before. So,
Yeah, maybe just first to touch on that question briefly. I think we've seen a lot of advances over the last few years of AI in modeling dynamical systems and physical systems. And I do think, maybe an early proof of concept is AlphaFold. And these kind of things can really help us, guide the development of therapeutics for things like cancer. And yeah, in terms of how, something like ChatGPT could change, like a patient-client relationship, it would be great if it just kind of allows you to access medical care at any time, right? Like it has the history of kind of what you've experienced. Maybe it has latents about kind of your mood, your kind of what kind of pain you're experiencing, and yeah, you don't really need to even schedule an appointment for you to get care.
Yeah, this is, I would say, deep water area, will make a lot of changes and also change the ecosystem that people are familiar with right now. Yeah, both on the, from the service providing side and also on the receiving side. All right, so I guess we have another one.
Yeah, I think we can go to the experts for one more, and then we can move on to the audiences to see if there are a couple of more questions. Okay. Also here with us we have Dr. Renjie Wu of the Taipei Medical University Hospital. 那同时呢，我们今天在现场的也有台北医学院的吴仁杰医师，是请医师也问个问题，谢谢。
Hello, hello everyone. I'm actually not an expert at all, but I'm primary care doctor working in the emergency department, and I also do some medical education work. And we know that there's a lot of research teams started working on how to use AI to labeling, like you mentioned, X-ray or even CT scanning, MRI, ECG to recognize pathology patterns. So I want to ask kind of like a following question according to the previous one, just like how do you guys like imagine the future of healthcare with AI, and how do doctors or people who are seeking for medical care, how do they use AI? And another would be like, what's the potential that Taiwan could do in this industry? Yes.
I was in Singapore a few weeks ago, about a month and a half ago, and I was pretty impressed by a piece of AI that was already deployed in National University Hospital, where if a patient goes in with pneumonia, sometimes the doctor says, oh, I think this patient will be in my hospital for 3 days, but the AI may say, no, I think this patient will be there for 15 days, and this causes the doctor to say, oh, wait, did I miss something? And this is changing the conversation already in some of the healthcare scenarios in Singapore. The reason this was deployed in Singapore, but I've not seen anything like this yet in the United States, is because of the cleanliness of the data. Your universal patient ID, the data is very clean, and so the speed of deployment was much faster in Singapore, in this example, than the United States. I think Taiwan could have those opportunities as well, and I know Yongling Foundation does a lot of work in healthcare as well, but I feel like as a well-run democratic country with a good healthcare system, I think there could be things that would be faster to take the market here. I would love to see a future where AI-enabled healthcare gives everyone access to the best doctor, and doctors can spend more time in patient care and build more empathy, rather than giving us 15 minutes, well, in the US, not sure about Taiwan, where we're going to see a doctor. But imagine if every one of us had access to the best doctor ever, that have read every single research paper. I think healthcare could be made much better.
Okay, any other comments on this? Okay, so thank you very much. Maybe we should...
Before we go to the audience questions, we just asked the people to do a little poll with us earlier today, and we got the results right now, and we'd like to share it with you. Regarding what do you think, and how do you make of an AI-enabled future world? We got up to 84% of people think they are very, very positive and also optimistic about it, and only 5% is pessimistic about it, and another 11% of people think that it's very difficult to predict. Okay? 那根据这个 AI 形塑的未来世界，84%的我们今天的朋友们都觉得非常乐观哦，然后11%觉得很难预测。And also regarding whether or not Taiwan has a competitive advantage in the race of AI, we got about 50-50. 50% of people think that Taiwan can become the front runner, and another 50% of people think that Taiwan has to work very hard and to fight for its own place in this competition.
Can we hold on this? I'm just curious. have you heard some sort of, such kind of poll in the past experience, the acceptance of AI or ChatGPT among the general population?
I haven't heard one like that, but I was very happy to hear how high the optimistic number was.
This is
I agree.
Taiwan. I'm just curious, what about in the States?
I don't know. We'll try one.
Do you have any clue? Or Andrew, Jay?
Made of poor?
Yeah, like, the question is regarding AI shaping our future, what is your impression? Are you optimistic? Or you said this is going to be a disaster?
More than 80% of people
Taiwan
think.
feels more optimistic than the United States to me, frankly. I think in the United States, in education, I'm seeing some high school students are thinking, boy, if this AI stuff could lead to human extinction, I don't want anything to do with that, and so they don't want to enter AI. So I'm hearing some vibes like that, which I think is very bad. And I think there are pretty intense worries about job loss in the US. So I feel like I'm actually very happy to hear Taiwan is so optimistic. It sounds right to me to be this optimistic, but I'm very happy to hear that.
Well, not Taiwan, but
this
people in this
smart people.
Yeah, but let's also reflect. People are interested in this topic. Most of them are fairly optimistic upon the future development.
Well, I think you don't have a generalized answer for this, right? Really depend on what the industry. I mean, semiconductor industry is very strong, so obviously it's a last opportunity. You got data here, so. But there's one risk though. Taiwan has a lot of traditional industry, like agriculture, fishing, et cetera, even. Those industry, second generation, sometimes people are not interested in continuing running. Japan had a similar problem, right? I worked with a Métis, and they say, a lot of natto companies and even sake, the second generation, they are not interested. And so recently I talked to Suntory CEO, Ninami-san. He said, Jay, I would like to really change the way how we brew our sake, right? You cannot find enough good people. I think same thing. We have a lot of low-hanging fruits. Long term, you may not have people like to do it. I think a lot of processes can be AI augmented, so you don't lose that knowledge and intelligence. To me, that's also very important. Yeah.
Okay. The third question is actually very important. It says, after attending this AI forum, listen to all the experts' opinion, what do you expect to learn? And the poll shows?
Yes. There's one very interesting question here. What do you expect AI can do for you after leaving the forum today, after having heard what our experts have to say today? And about 45% of people think that with AI, their life will become easier. And about another 45% of people think that with AI, they can work in an easier way. And 10% of people think that with AI, they can make more money.
What do you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, I really do think we should, at least in the short term, be thinking of AI as a tool, right? It's gonna make all the frustrating work basically non-existent, right? So you can already see this a little bit with ChatGPT, right? Like writing, you hit writer's block, it helps you get past that. And I do really think people, they still want to own key decisions. That won't change. But the frustrating work, we'll be able to take that away.
Yeah. Well, we have a spontaneous translator. I just wonder, is this using ChatGPT or what? Anyway, I also have one question from the audience, which is a long question, but it comes down to what cannot AI or ChatGPT do? Please.
Well, today, of course, it can't do most things. The question I think that's more interesting is what won't it be able to do in 5 years or 10 years or something like that? And there's a lot of things in that category. One thing that I think is particularly important is humans really care about what other humans do. Humans also tend to really have a good intuition for what other humans want. But when AI beat Garry Kasparov in chess, one of the first times like AI became known as a thing, this was a long time ago, it was the system called Deep Blue. You can go back and read the news articles, and they said like, well, you know, this is it. No one is ever going to play chess again. This thing is done. Fast forward to today, chess has never been more popular. It's also very popular to watch. No one, or not many people, watch like two AIs play against each other. We tend not to care about that. You know, we also really care if people are using AI to cheat. But there's this thing where like humans are interested in other humans in all sorts of ways. And I don't expect that to change, no matter how good AI gets.
Okay. Andrew?
After Garry Kasparov lost to Deep Blue, I stopped playing chess. It's actually, I don't know. I think technology is amazing. It's hard to predict exactly where it will go. I think that there are a lot of things that are still fundamental laws of physics. Humans can't break them. AI also can't break the laws of physics. And I think digital intelligence is very different than biological intelligences. But no matter how intelligent something is, some things are still hard. I think digital intelligence can do amazing things. It can do a lot. But I think that, like cure cancer, I just don't know. Even if with AI, you know, some fantastic intelligence, how easy will that be? I think it remains to be discovered. I'm optimistic, but I think a lot of these things are frontier things that remain to be discovered.
Well, I mean, obviously, there are certain things that we have to fundamentally rethink, right? Trustworthiness of AI is fundamentally important. And with today's social media networks, anybody can publish anything and can mislead sometimes bad decisions or bad judgment, right? So trustworthiness of the system has to be depend on a good evaluation assessment. So I think the University of Maryland has a center called Trustworthiness, funded by NSF for many years. To me, that's going to be one of the fundamental things. We must believe what we do. But how can we trust what AI does? That's another problem, right? Second thing is that we also have to look at when AI, should not never to hurt people, right? So I'm not just from physically, from feeling, from emotion, and whatever. So which means human beings need to also increase our own knowledge, judgment, to evaluate what is the AI society should be, right? Not just depend on whatever information you have. So I think that's both sides. It's not a one-way street. Yeah.
Okay. Mark?
Oh yeah, just to kind of add on to Sam's answer, I feel like humans are very social creatures. I don't think that's going to go away. We're probably going to have the same kind of social networks and social conventions. And of course, I think it'll still be very valuable to get a lot of likes on Instagram or something. So,
yep. Yeah. Well, I have another question, which is, this is interesting. Can AI solve global warming, or will accelerate the trend, given that, this is what I add, given that it uses a lot of energy and power consumption, computation power. So,
yeah,
Sam? Yeah.
It really doesn't today. Like if you think about the amount of global energy today going to AI, it is very tiny. It will ramp up. As mentioned earlier, we'll be on something non-carbon based by then. And yeah, I think AI will help us figure out how to pull the carbon out of the air or safely do geoengineering or something else. I think it's important to take climate change really seriously, but I also think we're going to get this solved.
Yeah, this is related to when I read about your comments that you want to reduce the cost of energy and intelligence down to near zero. You want to further comment on that? Why bring these two things together? So
I think those are the two key inputs to everything else. If you want people to have a better life, if you think about the things that it takes to deliver that, to create new things, to deliver products and services, to manipulate our environment, those are the two key inputs. And if you can make those very abundant for people, then people can have a much higher quality of lives. It's hard to point to things that don't get enabled with those two.
You know, I want to address that perception that AI generates a lot of carbon emissions. I think a Google web search, if you search on Google for something, I think Google's published an estimate that it generates, I forget, 2 grams or 0.2 grams or something of carbon emissions. You can find it online quite easily. If you compare that to if you had to drive in your car 5 miles away to the library to pull up something and drive home, that would generate probably hundreds of grams of carbon emissions. So Google search is incredibly efficient. The only reason why Google's data centers in aggregate seem to generate a lot of carbon emissions is because so many people find it so valuable that a lot of people use it. But but it's actually very efficient. So I think ChatGPT, most AI systems, they're actually much better in terms of carbon emissions than most alternatives. The reason they do generate carbon emissions is because so many people use it. Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't take the carbon emissions from data centers seriously. We all do, and this is why we work really hard to optimize the carbon emissions of data centers. But because of the concentration of compute in data centers, that gives better levers as well to reduce carbon emissions compared to, frankly, if the substitute to Google was all of us driving our cars to libraries, that's actually much harder to make more efficient. And then I think, Sam mentioned geoengineering. When I look at the state of the climate, I think we should put much more work into studying climate geoengineering, specifically high altitude aerosol injection to spray aerosols at high altitudes to reflect more sunlight to slow down the cooling of the planet. I wish we did not have to do this, but if we look at how we're missing, Paris Agreement, I think that the world is on a very bad trajectory that I think we should invest a lot more dollars into studying, not yet deploying, but definitely into doing deep scientific studies of climate geoengineering. And I believe that AI, if we have to deploy this, we'll need a fleet of AI-powered drones to deploy this, and there's also a lot of work to be done in AI-powered climate modeling. So I think AI has a big role to play in reducing climate change, and I do think we're past the point where we should take geoengineering much more seriously than we have so far.
Jane?
Yeah, I mean, global warming is a fact, right? It's always there. I think fundamentally we think it's awareness. Yeah, I know, everyone knows. Now you have to analyze where, why, and to avoid, reduce. So I met the former Vice President Al Gore at the Davos this year, early January. He has a foundation, right? So he can show, you go to his website, you can see exactly every place, every location, how this carbon generation, the map, right? So, of course, the truth is, one day, it has to be evidence-based. The government can tax you based on exactly how you generate, right? So again, the data you generate from each facility, even household, right? Each factory. Today, it's a regulation, it's a policy, incentives, penalty, right? So, and not evidence-based. I think AI going to drive more and more evidence-based. Yeah, to take a more serious action to do it, to me. Yeah.
Okay, I got question pouring in continuously, but because of the time, I'm gonna take the last one. This, I can only repeat it, I don't know the meaning. What should we address the issue of LLM hallucinations?
Sure, I can take it. Yeah. So yeah, this is a very difficult problem, just to begin with. So sometimes, LLMs will say incorrect information when you ask, give it a prompt.
What's LLM?
Oh, large language models. Yeah, like ChatGPT. So I think this is a byproduct of a couple of things, right? One, there's kind of unfactual information on the internet, right? And we're modeling that. And it's so oftentimes hard to tell. There are pieces of information where you can't cleanly classify something as factual or not. The second thing is, of course, the models, they don't see a lot of data where someone actually explicitly writes down, I don't know. Because usually if you don't know something, you wouldn't waste the time to write it down. So the models actually feels a lot of pressure to make forward progress and confidently declare an answer. The third thing, so one thing that we're doing to help, of course, we have a tool called reinforcement learning from human feedback. This is something where we've shown that it reduces the rate of hallucinations just by not defining explicitly what a hallucination is, but by just having humans label like, oh, this is what I prefer over this other response. Another thing we're doing is browsing, which actually grounds our model in a factual repository, right? When you issue a query, we can go on the internet and search for relevant results and cite our sources. So I think that's going to go a long way too.
Yeah.
That was great.
Okay. So with all that, I would like to, thanks all the panelists and all the questions raised by the audience. It's so fantastic. I enjoy a lot this afternoon. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands once again for Professor Lin, Andrew Ng, Jay Lin, Mark Chen, and Sam Altman. 再次给他们一个热烈的掌声，谢谢。Thank you so much. With that, we wrap up the AI Master Forum today. Thank you so much to our speakers for their valuable input, and thank you so much for your participation. 那么今天的 AI 大师论坛呢，就到这边告一段落。谢谢各位贵宾的参与哦。那请各位贵宾在离场之前呢，把识别证翻过来，扫描识别证背面的 QR code， 帮我们填写问卷。谢谢各位贵宾的参与。Please scan the QR code on the back of your badge and fill out the questionnaire for us online. We value your opinions a lot. We thank you again for your participation. 那如果有借口译设备的贵宾，也请您记得要归还到服务台 and do not forget to return the headsets. Thank you once again and have a great evening, everybody. Thank you.
100万订阅大突破，台视新闻 TTVNews 感谢有你。重要直播随时掌握，时事新闻不漏接，一刀未剪，新闻看得更完整。国际重大事件 ，catch 时事最新脉动，按赞订阅，开启小铃铛。